Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. Aaron Maté will be with us in just a minute on Al-Qaeda visits the United States. Who would have thought that might happen? But first this. My friends, if you care about your liberty and your right to control your own future, you need to hear about this. From October 10th to 12th, Mikkel Thorpe, host of the Expat Money Show, is bringing together top experts from around the world for the Expat Money Online Summit, and it's completely free to attend. You'll learn how to legally protect your wealth, secure second residences and citizenships, reduce your tax burden, and own property abroad, all to safeguard your freedom. This year's focus is on Latin America, where opportunity is booming. Argentina is shifting to free markets. El Salvador is undergoing a dramatic transformation, and Panama and Paraguay are offering simple residency programs. A Plan B is no longer optional, it's essential. Reserve your free ticket at expatmoneysummit.com. And if you want VIP access with special perks, including lifetime replay access and exclusive VIP panels, use promo code JUDGE for 20% off your upgrade. That's expatmoneysummit.com, promo code JUDGE. Aaron, welcome here, my dear friend. Before we get to the disgrace of Al-Qaeda in the United States, and I know you've seen this, General Petraeus is fawning over a mass murderer. What is your take on, what is your understanding of the so-called Gaza peace proposal, the neo-colonial Tony Blair as Governor General proposal offered by President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday?
The peace plan is a farce, and Benjamin Netanyahu didn't even wait until he left the U.S. to confirm that. Right after he met with Trump and said, yes, I accept your plan, and this is finally a way to end the war while still meeting all of our objectives, he told an Israeli audience in a Hebrew message that we're not withdrawing from Gaza. Now, this plan was also modified at the last minute. There was a meeting on Sunday between Ron Dermer, who's Netanyahu's top aide, and Steve Witkoff, Trump's so-called Middle East peace envoy, and Jared Kushner, who was supposed to be out of government after having served in Trump's first term, but is still playing an active role. And we know, because you played the clip before in your show, Jared Kushner's vision for Gaza is simply to turn it into a real estate development that he could profit off of. And so at the last minute, they included all these new demands that Netanyahu and Ron Dermer were making, bare minimum of any kind of Palestinian aspirations. And the main thing is keeping Israeli military control over Gaza. So this is not a peace plan. It's just terms of surrender to Hamas.
Our dear, wonderful friend Max referred to it, I forget what show he was on, Piers Morgan, as putting lipstick on the Holocaust.
Yeah, that's a great line. People should watch that interview. It's up now on Piers Morgan's YouTube channel. Max took on Alan Dershowitz and other Israeli propaganda.
Oh, you're being charitable. He more than took on. He demolished Dershowitz.
Yes, he did. Yeah. It's great to, Max is just, let me say a word about Max. He wrote a seminal book about Israel called Goliath more than a decade ago, predicting exactly what is happening now. The point of the book is simply that Israel is off the spectrum in its fanaticism, not just in the Netanyahu coalition, but across the spectrum. So it was a prescient book. He was widely attacked, including by many of his own media colleagues at the time. It was totally prescient. And since then, he's one of the leading authorities on this issue in the U.S., but this is his first time on the Piers Morgan show, nearly 2 years after October 7th. And many, unfortunately, of our independent media colleagues, I'm on the left, so is Max, have not had him on. So hopefully they'll follow the lead of Piers Morgan and finally let him share with a mass audience all that he has to know about this vital issue.
Was this, when I left Fox, he was a Fox employee. Was this a Fox product, or is this something he does independently?
Piers Morgan's channel, I believe, still is a News Corporation entity, but
that's very telling. If Max, I'm going to say this very directly, and I love Max, as you know, and I'm happy for him. If he passed the censors at Fox, or a couple of blocks from where I am now in New York City. That is very, very telling and very good news for those of us who want Max to be unleashed
Yes.
In areas where you and I can't appear.
It was long overdue to have him on Piers Morgan. And I don't know, I don't want to get it wrong if Piers Morgan's totally independent now or if he's News Corp. But regardless, it's great to see him, Max, reach a large audience. And to the extent, this reflects public opinion. If you look at polls now, Democratic Party, across all party lines, more Americans now, I think, according to the most recent poll, have more sympathy for Palestinians than they do Israelis, which is a very historic shift. Years and years, decades and decades and decades of propaganda to demonize all Palestinians, to portray Israelis as the victims of hostile Arab neighbors, finally collapsing for the sheer result of Israeli barbarism, and also just the entitlement and impunity that Israel enjoys, constantly portraying themselves as the victims while carrying out mass murder.
Chris informs me Piers Morgan owns the Piers Morgan Uncensored brand through his production company, Wake Up Productions. All right. Well, the Fox people will watch it. He bought it from News UK, part of the Rupert Murdoch News Corp empire, in January of this year. All right. Well, when I knew Piers, he was a colleague at Fox, but whatever. I'm glad
it's great to see one media entity not currently owned by the Ellison billionaires to be handed over to Barry Weiss and other Israel activists. So I hope Piers continues on this independent path.
Agreed. You were talking about the hemorrhaging of support for Netanyahu and his crew here in the U.S. Our friend and colleague, Alistair Crook, sort of set me up by saying Netanyahu is getting ready for his 8th war. And I said, you mean against Iran? He said, no, I mean against people in the United States who in droves are rejecting him. Now, he stands in the White House, smiles with the president, praises the agreement, and then gets on a plane and types something in Hebrew that says the opposite. What's Trump going to do?
Trump's going to do absolutely nothing. Trump is fully in lockstep with Netanyahu. Occasionally we'll get some deceptive leaks saying that Trump is furious with Netanyahu. We had the exact same playbook under the Biden administration where, the Biden people would put the stuff out while still giving Netanyahu pretty much everything he wanted. And that's what Trump is doing here. This so-called peace plan includes some vague nod to Palestinian self-determination and statehood maybe one day, but that's the same thing all along. There's never any concrete steps being promised to help Palestinians achieve their basic right to self-determination. And the same goes for all the other states that recently recognized Palestine. Have any of them offered any practical steps as to what they're going to do to help Palestinians achieve that minimal right to self-determination? Nothing. No one's doing anything because Israel is running the show. And as long as they have U.S. backing for that, they'll have complete impunity to do it. And you can see that in this peace plan. It got even worse after Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff met with Ron Dermer. And it just speaks to the overall dynamic here where the Trump administration just does what Israel says that it wants. And that's been the issue throughout the so-called peace process. Everything is the so-called peace process. Everything is framed around Israel's security needs, Israel's goals, not Palestinians' security needs, who are, of course, the most threatened people in that region.
So yesterday was a charade negotiated on behalf of the United States by two people, neither of whom works for the government. One is the president's son-in-law, who's looking to become a real estate developer of this land. The other, another real estate developer, is the president's friend. Okay, so they don't want Marco Rubio in on this. Nevertheless, in light of what Netanyahu thought in his head, must have thought this when he was saying he agreed, he knew he was lying. In light of the lies he told the president, in light of what Dermer must have told Witkoff and Kushner, it was a facade, a charade, a joke that they expect us to accept.
Yes, and this is the playbook throughout this entire issue. Look at the so-called peace process that was supposed to lead to a Palestinian state. Oslo Accords, formally signed in 1993. Did that go anywhere? No. Israel used the mirage of a so-called peace process of constantly negotiating with Palestinians toward their eventual statehood to build up more illegal Israeli settlements, colonies in the occupied West Bank. So it's a very similar playbook here. And there's just so much contempt for Palestine that they even tried to shove in Tony Blair, who's best known for being part of the criminal invasion of Iraq and telling all the lies that were used to justify that war. Trump helped launch his political career by criticizing the Iraq war, by pretending that he was against it and calling out the neocons. And now he goes ahead and for his plan for Gaza, he wants to bring in Tony Blair to help run a new Gaza Strip. And there's a reference there to the people of Gaza being able to stay, but they don't say the Palestinians of Gaza. So, it seems to me as if they're still holding on to this, vision of basically expelling as many Palestinians as they can, bringing in low-wage slave workers to come serve whoever they can manage to come, entice to come in and build new resorts inside of Gaza. Just completely dystopian.
Here's Netanyahu with the president yesterday. We'll run the clip, but he basically says two things. Your plan is consistent with the 5 principles of my government. A lot of baloney. You'll hear it. And then he hints, but maybe Hamas won't accept it. Chris, number 9.
Your plan is consistent with the 5 principles my government set for the end of the war and the day after Hamas. Now, if this international body succeeds, we will have permanently ended the war. Israel will conduct further withdrawals linked to the extent of disarmament and demilitarization, but will remain in the security perimeter for the foreseeable future. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done.
Of resistance is Hamas putting up in Gaza City? Do we know?
Occasionally, you'll find some Israeli soldiers being attacked, but look, all of Gaza is destroyed. So, how much resistance can there really be under these conditions? The aim here is, I don't think Netanyahu cares about Hamas keeping its weapons. They're of no threat to Israel anymore. The aim here is just permanently crushing Palestinian self-determination and expelling as many people as possible. And nothing has changed with the so-called peace plan. Yes, the plan talks about people of Gaza being able to stay, but if you're making their life impossible, if you've destroyed all of Gaza, how many people will really be able to stay, especially under these horrible conditions? I'm not sure what Hamas is going to do. Life right now in Gaza is unimaginably miserable. I still know a few people who are there who are alive, and I just can't speak to how horrible it is. And Hamas is under pressure, I think, even from people inside Gaza who are aware of what a colonial, evil deal this is, but still they're desperate. They have no food. They have nothing. They have nowhere to sleep. Tents cost a lot of money. Most people can't even afford to get a tent. So you have people sleeping out on the street. It's a nightmare. So I don't know what Hamas will do. But what Netanyahu cares about is keeping military control, which, as he bragged about, the peace plan allows him to do, and using any post-conflict control of Gaza to push out as many people as possible.
All right, switching gears. So Abu Abbas, I think I have his right name. I know he has several names. The nominal head of the Palestinian Authority, the recognized by the UN representative of the Palestinian people at the UN, was denied a visa to the United States. But a man who posed with pictures of himself with a severed head in each hand and a smile on his face, because he's wearing a Brooks Brothers suit and has cleaned up his appearance, and because his group now dominates a portion of Syria and he calls himself the president of Syria, was allowed to come. How did this thug get in? Who sponsored him?
Well, so you're referring to Mohammed al-Jilani, who's now the president of Syria under a new name, Ahmed al-Shara, who's the founding leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria, al-Nusra. And he was let in because he's on our side. Jake Sullivan wrote this back in 2012. Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And Al-Qaeda finally won last year with the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. I'm not sure about the anecdote of Jelani posing with severed heads. I haven't heard that one. So
we can't post it, but Chris will send it to you.
okay, well, I didn't know that, but look, he was the head of Al-Qaeda in Syria. They have committed sectarian atrocities throughout the dirty war, including after he became president of Syria. There have been at least 2 major massacres under Jelani's watch, of Alawites in March and of the Druze in July. Well over 1,000 people killed by Jelani's forces, exactly as they did when they were known as Al-Qaeda in Syria during the dirty war. And he's allowed in the U.S. because now he's on our side. He's posing with Marco Rubio. Trump is calling him handsome. And, the reason there is because we waged a dirty war in Syria to weaken and finally regime change a country that was a member of the Axis of Resistance, the axis that resisted Israeli-U.S. aggression in the region. That's why Syria was marked for regime change. In the 2006 Lebanon-Israel war, Hezbollah helped prevent an Israeli victory by getting arms, including from Syria, via Iran. And so therefore, Syria was marked for regime change. In fact, it was marked for regime change even before that, we know from Wesley Clark after 9/11. Ironically enough, after 9/11, where Al-Qaeda attacks the U.S. marks Syria for regime change and then uses Al-Qaeda for that goal. And now, in the month marking the anniversary of 9/11, the former leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria gets to come and visit. And meanwhile, as you said, the Palestinian Authority, headed by Mahmoud Abbas, who are collaborators with the Israeli occupation, they've been completely subordinated to Israeli occupation, but because they occasionally act out of line, for example, they go to the International Criminal Court, they still ask politely for token recognition of statehood, then of course they have to be punished. So the Trump administration denied them visas. So we punish even Palestinian collaborators because occasionally they get out of line, but we reward Al-Qaeda because they're on our side in Syria.
I know this is going to aggravate you, and I know you've seen it, but I got to run it again. This is General David Petraeus fawning over al-Jilani. I just looked him up because I couldn't remember where he worked now. He works at KKR, Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, where he's a partner. That's a major private investment bank. Gee, I wonder if they're looking for some sort of land deals in Syria. What do you think, Chris? Cut number 24.
As you know, Mr. President, I spent over 37 years in the U.S. Army, and I was a soldier, not a diplomat. So I hope you'll forgive me if I speak with the directness of the old soldier that I am as I get the first question out of the way. Because the fact is that we were on different sides when I was commanding the surge in Iraq. You were, of course, detained by U.S. forces for some 5 years, including, again, when I was the 4-star there. And here you are now as the president of Syria. I just want you to tell you, really on behalf of all the people who are here, that this conversation has truly filled me with enormous hope. It has been very, very heartening and illuminating. Your vision is powerful and clear. Your demeanor itself is very impressive as well. How are you holding up under all this pressure? Are you getting enough sleep at night? Again, I've been there, and it is so very, very hard. And your many fans, and I am one of them, we do have worries.
How do you account for that obsequious? I mean, it gives the word sycophant a new meaning because of its first syllable, sick.
Imagine if you're a U.S. Army veteran and you signed up to serve your country after 9/11 because you wanted to fight Al-Qaeda. And now you have a former director of the CIA, former top U.S. military leader, praising the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria. It's such an insult to U.S. Army veterans, I think, especially given that al-Jilani, his forces were involved in killing U.S. soldiers inside Iraq, including soldiers that Petraeus commanded. But the reason why Petraeus has switched and now is praising Jilani is because Petraeus wanted regime change in Syria. That was deemed to be a huge win for U.S. hegemony, U.S.-Israeli hegemony. And so therefore, it was even worth siding with Al-Qaeda. It was worth it, despite their record not only of killing U.S. soldiers, but killing and still killing many civilians inside of Syria, as Jolani's forces are still doing. So, and Petraeus was a huge proponent of the strategy. He was an architect of the dirty war in Syria. Obama sort of approved it in his administration under pressure from Petraeus and Hillary Clinton. And after it got underway, it was very clear that the insurgency that the U.S. was supporting was dominated by Al-Qaeda. And Petraeus openly advocated partnering with them because he felt it was worth it if it could just mean overthrowing Assad. It's a thing in Washington, like once a country becomes marked for regime change, anything is on the table and anything is worth it. It's just how the system works. And Petraeus is a very key cog in that machine. So now that regime change has been successful, even though it's entailed thousands of Syrians, hundreds or thousands of Syrians being slaughtered by Jolani's forces, it doesn't matter. And so he can be praised by David Petraeus because he served our goal, which was overthrowing an ally of Hezbollah and Iran and weakening Hezbollah and Iran in the first place, because the U.S. architects of the dirty war knew that if they spent billions of dollars along with their allies, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, countries in Europe, Israel as well, overthrowing a government, that Iran and Hezbollah would have to intervene on Assad's behalf, That's exactly what they did, and Russia came in as well. So this was a huge win for them because they bled not only a state that was not under U.S. control, but they also bled their allies and finally succeeded by having the former Al-Qaeda guy come to power.
Aaron, thank you very much. A great conversation and very, very illuminating. You know so much about all this. Thank you for sharing it. All the best to you. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, Judge. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Coming up at 3:00 on all of these topics with her unique perspective, Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.